y'all, so this is one of the 2 week 4 assignments. This one's the structures and functions. So this is our research paper. It's fun. Okay, so on the side, we're just going to go through the side first. You got the APA template, the reference help. So that's like always, it's general template to help you write the paper. Reference help is the walkthrough on the reference citation generator, and then we have my rubric. This paper, you're going to pick an organism 50 miles in your home. It is a paper, so no first person point of view. That means no I, you, we, are, my, etc. You're going to write at least 1,050-word research paper about how organism has adapted to survive the environment, and you're going to have points. An organism 50 miles of your home, it doesn't have to be. If you want to do something else that just really fascinates you, it's fine. I don't really care. That's just more of like, hey, think about what lives near your house, near your home, that's always interested you. You know, what's out there? I always like to do like national parks and see what's in them, or just any animal you've really been curious about. You might want to look for the diagram first because that can be harder to find. We'll talk about the diagram more when we get there. Okay, so you're going to briefly describe the environment and describe the organism's role in the environment, determine how the organism determine which organism your chosen organism is most closely related to using a phylogenetic tree, so who's it's closely related to. Identify the structures and functions of the main organs found in your organism, and explain the organism, how the organism has evolved physiologically to become suited to your environment. I'm going to talk more about this when we do the rubric. Then explain. Okay, so then we transport the bad boy. So he lives where you live. Now let's say he's transported to somewhere really different. Try somewhere that has a chance of living. So like, you don't transport a fish to like the air like a bird. Instead, think like, here's this animal that lives in a prairie. Let's transfer him to like a snow area. So like, you know, it's not automatic death, but it's still probably likely depending on what the animal is. Describe the new environment specifically. So don't say like, I transferred him to a snowy area. You're going to say, I transferred him to Alaska. You know, Denali National Park in Alaska. Or I transferred it to the Great Basin National Park in California. Okay, so I do a lot of parks. It's just so easy to find information. But you would just be really specific, you know? Just really specific. And that helps you figure out the next parts, which is like, so now that you know specifically where you sent it exactly, you can really talk about, will the organ system still be efficient? So make sure you're talking about what you already mentioned before. So if you're talking about a snake and you tell me all about how it can do venom, you're going to need to talk about that in the new environment. So it should be kind of like, okay, what I already talked about up in the first half down here. And then which organ would the organism survive the environment? You just kind of close with that and then have like a concluding paragraph, right? And make sure you include a paragraph, blah, blah, blah. Include a diagram with structures labeled. So if you do like a squirrel, you'd have a picture and have little arrows pointing to like different parts of it. And then format it in APA. It's going to be 3 points for this one for format, as a point for references, and 2 for format. And again, no first person. So let's go ahead and look at that rubric and just kind of go through some stuff a little bit more in detail. That was exciting. I had forgotten to open it. Okay, so here it all is. I'm going to do, that's my list. Oh, and you can use the prompts as headings, but you'll want to reword them. So if you use instead of saying like, explain how things would change in the organism, transplant, you say like, transplanted environment. Or briefly describe the environment, you say environment and role, and then talk about it. I break this down a little bit more in the table version, so we're going to scroll down to that. What's weighed most? That's where I care the most. So if you notice, this part's 6 points, this part's 5 points, and one of these is a gimme point, so you're probably going to spend most of your time on this part. This is all still going to be different paragraphs. The then's there to remind you that this is, you're focusing here, then you're going to switch your focus a little bit, right? Is anything weighed equally? So that's what I care about the same. And then paper headings help me, blah, blah, blah. So make sure you do the easy points. Okay, so here we broke it down a little bit. So it's going to be half a point for that environment, talking about the temperature, the landscape, the food sources. A point for its role. So is it a predator? What eats it? What does it eat? A half a point is then going to go for the who's it's closest related to in your phylogenetic tree. You probably want to look at like the Tree of Life website. Just find out, if you find out the scientific name, see if anyone else is in the same genus. If it has a subspecies, who else is in the same species? And that'll get you there pretty quickly, right? Then I give you little notes like, where does it live? What is it like there? Discuss the points. They'll be later on, be more relevant later on. And is a predator, producer, scavenger, herbivore specialist. Those are terms that will help you figure out the role. So when we talk about structure, you have 2 points to identify the structures and talk about them. Here, you don't want to do a mind dump. It's really easy just to say, here's all this really neat stuff that I learned, and just kind of vomit it out. So what you need to do to keep that from happening is to have that strong thesis at the end of your introduction. When you have that strong thesis, you can tie all your paragraphs back to it as a reminder, and that will keep the brain dump from happening. But you just want to make sure to do that. Also, don't get too quote heavy. You want to have things paraphrased and in your own words, or it's going to look like you just researched and copied and pasted. And we want you to know, I want to know that you analyze this information and made new connections. That's why you connect everything back to that thesis, because it reminds me that you're making the connection. What's the connection? What's the point? The thesis is the theme that runs through your paper, so make sure I see that theme, okay? I stick the diagram here rather than later because I would probably put it right before the evolution or put it above the structures section. It's just me personally. And you get a point for getting that diagram in your paper, and then you'll also get a point for mentioning it. So if you're talking about structures, it's really easy to do. You say like, as seen in figure 1, blah, 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 or figure 1 shows blah, 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 right? And then you'd have your picture below it, say figure 1 colon, whatever you're calling it, like bearded dragon anatomy, because he's staring at me, and then in-text citation in parentheses, right? So it should be pretty good. And then evolution. So what this is going to be doing, there's a real slash here. Good to know that I didn't just delete it. We'll save that. You may not see a change. Depends on when you take this class. Ha ha ha. Okay, so in this, you talked about the role, right? You talked about the structures. Evolution section is where you're going to put these two together. So you're going to say, it does this role, which is helped by this structure, right? Or does this thing, which is helped by this structure. So it's going to be how the two work together. You can put the evolution, the structures section together. So you can have a paragraph where you say like, here's the structure, here's how it helps it. Here's the structure, here's how it helps it. Or you can separate them out. I personally would merge them because I think that would help me as a writer at my skill level, which can suck at times, and I just think that would work in my brain better. If it helps you to separate them, do it that way. It's whatever works in your brain the best, and you can even start typing it one way and then just merge them or separate them out if it just looks like junk. That is why computers are amazing things. I have totally written whole paragraphs just because I felt that I had to and then deleted them because then they weren't that good. It's okay. So then here in the transplanted environment, so you see I put this all in one chunk because it's probably just going to be one paragraph. So you have to tell me what the new environment is, tell me 2 points for the organ system, and one how it's adapted or how it works in this new environment. So like if you took something from the cold and moved it to the desert, how might it work? This is going to be from your brain, most likely. If you decide to do an invasive species or one that has moved, you can do that. Oops. And then you would actually have information here, but it is totally fine to say this is what you think because you become the expert in this species, right? And then you'll say whether it survived. Make sure you say this. It's so easy for students to forget to tell me this and to say like, you know, so therefore my organism, whatever. So therefore the bearded dragon would indeed die if I submerged it at the depths of Atlantis or something, right? And then here we go, half a point for in-text, half a point for full. You need to have them all match and be pretty, or I will be mad. And then we have a point for the 100 level APA requirements, and a full point for the thesis. So you need to have that thesis in there because now it's really becoming important. With a short little paper, if you don't have a thesis, it's not going to throw your paper off too much, but here you gotta have it, and it needs to be pretty specific. So you probably do something like genus species has evolved set traits such as blah blah to thrive in its chosen environment, and then you can talk about that. I might say, but these adaptations don't work in an environment such as the desert, or it does. Just try to put it all in there. For your thesis, you kind of want to have something that summarizes the whole paper in one sentence and where you're going. Generally, I will write a vague one, then write my paper and tweak it to make it actually fit. Because sometimes you write a thesis and you find out that's not what I actually talked about. But I actually did that the other day with an English student. We were doing a paper. We thought we were going to talk about one thing, and we talked about something totally different, and then just tweaked the thesis to fit. That is not a problem. Okay, so hopefully this helps and makes sense. If you have any questions, you can always send me a private message. I love private messages. As always, you can send rough drafts before Monday at noon unless otherwise indicated. Make sure you always check those private messages and class messages. I really do try to provide helpful information, especially with things like the weekly How Goes It. You'll see they kind of show you where you need to be, because the first week they talked about full references. The second week they talk about in-text citations. This one will probably give you something to the effect of like what easy points that you want to make sure you don't miss, such as having the diagram and talking about it. You'd be surprised how many people miss that, and it's really sad. It's 2 free points. Take your 2 free points, right? It's like the, where did you transplant it? Just be specific so you can give you a point. You know, did it survive? Be specific. Let me give you the point. Some points are there to give you points, and try to earn them. If you have problems with format, that is a definite reason to submit a rough draft, because it can really help you. That is something I'm quite talented at. That's the bitching when the UOP doesn't do it right. I think that's everything. I hope this helps.